a lot for the moment. To stay with us, we move to the other speakers so that we can have some time for a number of questions. I have a lot of questions already. So let me give immediately the floor to Professor Turchetti, that is now focusing our attention. So we move from the general framework plus, I mean, the fake news conundrums and all the implications at the platform levels, to focusing in data-driven markets and innovation on a specific field, which is highly dense of innovation, highly relevant for the gross products, net products of every country, including Italy, which is health. Please, Giuseppe, you have the floor.
Thank you, Giovanni. Good morning, everybody. Yes, as Giovanni was saying, I'm an economist, and one of my focuses in terms of areas of research is healthcare, and in particular, technological innovation in healthcare. So, considering that the title of this session, Data-Driven Markets and Innovation, is so huge, I thought to focus a little bit on one area like healthcare, just to provide some examples and to have the reasoning I would like to propose to you. Let's see. Yes, this is very briefly the agenda, the relationship between innovation, data, and markets in the healthcare. I present two different types of relationships, what I call a type 1 relationship and type 2 relationship, and some future steps. With respect to the first one, we could say that in general, the relationship between innovation, data, and markets in healthcare is a perfect combination. It's a perfect combination if you think that healthcare and innovation are an inseparable combination. You simply, if you think at drugs and new medical devices and new large technological equipment that really characterize our healthcare nowadays, but also healthcare and data are an inseparable combination. If you think at the hospital clinical data, if you think at all the data coming from labs, from instrumental tests, from clinical trials, and also from the day-by-day accumulation of knowledge, of new evidence, this is new data that we collect every day. And these data are actually really the engine and the drivers of the next innovation. Both technological, and this is evident. We rely on data collected through many different sources of test exams and hospital procedures, but also organizational, also procedural, also managerial. There is a lot of innovation in these areas that come from the interaction between data and healthcare. Data and innovation create the opportunities for new markets and new businesses. I will show you some examples in the next slides. So the relationship between innovation, data, market is really a perfect combination. The type 1 innovation, well, I think the innovations that are rooted inside the healthcare sector, like, for example, new drugs, new medical devices, new large technological equipment, those are really developed by actors rooted into the healthcare sector, like public research centers, pharmaceutical companies, medical device companies. Those actors produce this kind of innovation. Innovation that is continuously improving the quantity and the quality of our lives. And there are so many examples of these kind of technologies that are in our hospitals, are in the healthcare facilities close by our homes, are within our homes, and as I will show you in the next slides, are also wearable technologies. And so I would like to skip to the second type of relationship between innovation data and markets in healthcare. And this kind of innovation is an innovation that does not come from inside the sector. Is coming or largely guided by other sectors. So the innovations that we experience in the ICT, in the sensors sector, in the wearable devices, social network, medical apps, Internet of Things sectors, those technologies are able to measure, monitor, and collect a growing quantity of personal, individual data related not only to our health conditions, but also to our habits, to our behaviors in terms of eating behavior, sleep quality, stress level, or physical activity. So our lifestyle, all those data might be collected, monitored, and stored because of these technologies. And because of these data, because of these innovations, we have brand new data that we used not to have in the past, and are very precious data if you think about it. So the question, that is the question of the session, is, do these data generate innovation in markets? I try to answer to this question in the next slides. Let's think, for example, wearable technologies. We all wear some technology. The mobile phone is a technology, so 100% of us wear this wearable technology. But maybe many of us also wear other wearable technologies that collect data related to our day-by-day physical activity or our lifestyle. And what is interesting, talking about healthcare, that many of those wearable devices actually are dedicated to health in a large sense, in a broad sense. Medical applications, but also wellness, but also sport and fitness. Let's say that they are all related to our health and our well-being. And those technologies generate data. Those technologies and those data generate markets, generate companies, generate business opportunities. And it's a phenomenon that is growing, and it will grow even more in the future. This question, how would you be interested in wearing or using a sensor device, assuming it was from a brand you trust, offering a service that interests you? 28% would use it embedded in the wrist. 18% clicked on shoe. 15% embedded into clothing, or in jewelry, or in headphones, or in glasses, or in contact lenses, or tattooed on skin. Okay, so definitely it's a behavior that will grow and will diffuse even more in the next future. And according to this study, almost 70% of US adults keep track of at least one health indicator, such as weight, diet, exercise routine, or some health symptoms. And 82% of Americans, 71% of Brits, said that cloud-powered devices have enhanced their lives, or improved their health and fitness, or help them feel more in control of their lives. So those technologies really create a change in our behavior, okay? And this is create a change in our behavior in a very innovative way, driven by the availability of those data. And just a couple of slides to highlight how important is this change in our behavior. Behavioral risks like tobacco, alcohol, drugs, bad eating habits, or limited physical activity play a very important role in the probability of having a long and healthy life. We measure this impact in terms of dailies, so disability adjusted life years. That means the number of years of healthy life lost due to illness and premature death. And 75% of these dailies are directly linked to our behavior. So it is very important to have an impact on this behavior. Non-communicable diseases, that are the diseases that are really related to our behavior, are the first cause of death, can be prevented, for example, through a more active physical activity. And the role of wearable devices in modifying behaviors, let's have some other results coming from a study. Wearable tech, 82% of consumers using this kind of technology say that help them to exercise smarter or to improve their personal accountability and so also responsibility in managing their health and their life, or to be more efficient at home and or at work. So the impact is very relevant. So there are many opportunities coming from this innovation, coming from these new data. Change of behaviors and lifestyles, increasing the personal responsibility, improvement in the effectiveness of prevention initiatives and of therapies, meaning higher adherence to therapy, improvement of health, quality of life, general well-being of the population. And these, as economists, we should always highlight that this has a very important implication in terms of healthcare expense in the medium long term, and development of new products and new business. So the answer to the question of this session is, from my point of view, is yes. Data collected via, for example, wearable devices, as I showed you, could drive innovation and could drive the creation of new markets. What I wanted to highlight is that it's not only an innovation that can be declined or articulated in terms of new products like new drugs, new medical technologies, biotech, or large medical equipment, but also innovation in the organization and in the management of healthcare. The combination of the much wider availability of data and artificial intelligence in healthcare is opening so many new opportunities, and some of those are here in this slide. I would like to focus just on one of those scenarios. That is research. Research that could drive us to more personalized diagnosis, more personalized treatments, so a more personalized medicine, because we know in detail the patient-specific data, not only in terms of health data, but also data coming from, for example, wearable devices that take into account our lifestyle, our eating habits, our physical activity, and so on. And this has a very important implication in terms of health outcomes, but also in terms of business, because of the availability of data, many companies are entering into the market in many different areas, in many different sectors, in telehealth, or in medical imaging, or in the IT for the hospitals, or in mental health. There are many examples in mental health or in personalized genetics. You see, all these areas are important opportunities for business and for the creation of new companies. What I would like to highlight is research, as I was saying before, in the drug market, in the pharmaceutical market. Just to remind us that from a drug discovery through the FDA approval might have as a time span 10 or 15 years, sometimes more than 15 years, with a huge amount of cost of investments, looking for, the 1 out of X, where X is very high, chances to have a new compound approved by FDA. And this R&D process could be really shortened in an unbelievable way. On the left side of this slide, you see on average how long does it take to pass from one phase to the other in the R&D process. From discovery and screening to the lead optimization might take 2.5 years. The next step, 4 years. Because of the availability of data and artificial intelligence, it's a matter of weeks, it's a matter of months. So you understand that the cost and investment required would be much lower, and the time to market for the clinical application, clinical prescription of a new drug might be much shorter for benefiting patients. Okay, so this is one of the most important implications of the availability of data and the computational power of artificial intelligence. So just to conclude, because we are mature enough to know that there is always the reverse of the coin. There are some criticalities to take into account. Of course, privacy issues, because this availability of huge amount of data creates this problem. Safety issues with the potential theft of these data. The management of collected heterogeneous data, because it's not only anymore a matter of health data, but also a non-health data. The ownership of these data and the possibility to sell this data, and so also the potential misuse of this data. So these dimensions must really be taken into account. The last slide, just to propose an optimistic view of these data and the opportunity that is embedded in this data to create innovation and to create new markets. Despite the risks and the potential criticalities that some of those I put in the previous slide, I think we should favor the exploitation of all the potential benefits related to these data generated by many different sources, and many of those sources do not belong strictly to the healthcare sector, but belong to other sectors. How? Through the design of new mechanisms able to introduce effective incentives to all the stakeholders in order to promote and to pursue the benefits that I've shown to you before and are very powerful, like, for example, to empower citizens and to allow them to recognize which are the healthy lifestyles to adopt and to self-manage their disease, their well-being. This is very important, and you need data in order to pursue this objective. From an economic point of view, to have a healthier population would also mean to favor the economic sustainability of our healthcare system, and also to open the field to the birth of new companies, and to favor the creation of new sectors like the ones that they have shown in that very busy slide. We have to be very careful, and I conclude. And most of you, I guess, are in the law field, because data, innovations, and markets usually run much faster than regulation. So keep a very strict eye on what's going on, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Turchetti. It seems that our speakers are clearly and very beautifully tying in with the other parts. So I will not spare further time. I give you the floor, Dr. Buttà. Thanks again for being with us. Your presentation?
No, I don't have, but I'll stand.
Yeah,
so
perfect.
I would walk actually if I could. But
You can.
I'll just stand.
You can just use the this microphone.
Oh, okay. Oh, why not? So excellent. So
Makes more dynamic.
we bring down the crystal wall. Okay, so good morning. And I'm Antonio Buttà, I'm the Chief Economist of the Italian Competition Authority. So I know some of you because you spent some time with us. It's great to see you again. And indeed, it has been actually an honor and a pleasure to be partner of this to the LeADS project. Also because the structure of the LeADS project is really similar to what actually we've been doing in competition enforcement in the last few years, doing research, bringing together different issues from different disciplines, trying to understand what's going on and make sure that data-driven societies and data-driven markets deliver good things for society and individuals. And for us, individuals are actually consumers. So I'm going to talk about the interplay between innovation, markets, and institutions. And I will do that from the perspective of my institution. So I will share my dirty hands with you. So not all of them would take it probably too long. We have 20 minutes, but I'm going to try to bring you in 20 minutes behind the doors to see what are the issues that we've been working on in the last few years in the competition community related to data-driven markets. And for those of you who are, lawyers who've never really dealt with competition and markets, just a quick explanation of what we do. We do very simple things, okay? So we protect competition, and we do that enforcing national law as well directly European law, and making sure that there are no anti-competitive agreements between companies, making sure that dominant companies do not abuse their dominant position. We also assess mergers to make sure that mergers do not lessen competition in markets. We advocate against restrictive regulations that can hinder competition and innovation. And we've done that also with respect to digital platforms. And on top of that, as if that wasn't enough, actually, the Italian Competition Authority is not only a competition authority, but it is also a consumer protection authority. Okay, so we enforce competition rule, but we also enforce consumer protection. And actually, we made use of all these tools to pursue, if you want, a common strategy, a common policy objective in protecting consumers in data-driven markets. Okay, so now let me give just a few examples of what I mean and what we've been doing in these different fields and why we care and how this intersection between different fields is relevant. And let me start, for instance, with mergers. As I was telling you, mergers is something we look at to make sure that external growth by companies, which is normally beneficial, can bring up efficiency, does not restrict competition in markets. And so in the last few years, we actually understood that competition in digital market has also evolved through a lot of acquisitions, of merger and acquisitions. And we also realized that actually, because of the law was written, competition authorities were not looking into those acquisitions, a lot of those acquisitions. So hundreds of acquisitions by the largest technological digital platforms, only a few were investigated by competition authorities. And so what actually has happened, and when we were investigating those mergers, at the beginning, let's say 10 years ago, 12 years ago, we were a little bit struggling, if I may say so, now with the benefit of hindsight, in using techniques of analysis that were really probably consistent with the new markets that we were looking at. So what has happened? Just innovation affects institution as well as markets. So we have certainly developed our analytical tools. So if you read now decisions by competition authorities looking in digital markets, you will find chapters on data. So chapters trying to understand why the combination of data may reinforce market power, why or in what circumstances it might be a barrier to entry. And you also find remedies that competition authorities devise when there are concerns to make sure that these things don't happen. Okay, so for instance, we talked about wearable devices. That is a merger relevant to that market between Google and Fitbit. And an issue there was about the integration of the data about the personal health that Fitbit devices could bring into the Google ecosystem, and whether that would have reinforced Google dominance and entrench its dominant position. So remedies were imposed to make sure that that data stayed in a silo. So there could be trade-offs, as we have already seen in the presentation before, that depends on how that data is used for, whether it's used for innovation, whether it's used simply for ads, personalization. So that's an example of how these different things. And we also changed the law, okay? Because we realized that it was under enforcement, a lot of European countries changed the legislation to make sure that we could actually examine these mergers. And Italy did also. So we changed the Italian legislation, and now we can call in certain mergers that we would have not been able to look at under the previous law, because traditionally laws are based on turnover thresholds. But a lot of these companies that are acquired do not have really a lot of revenues when they are acquired. Normally, often they are very young companies, and so they were going under the radar. So because of these changes, so we've been able in Europe to look into a lot more of mergers. Even recently, Italy has recalled a big merger in the IA value chain by an important operator in that value chain, and it's going to now be assessed in cooperation actually by the European Commission. So innovation has affected the way markets work. It has affected also the way institutions work at the technical level, at the institutional level, at the policy level, because then it also affects what type of priorities an institution decides to follow. And certainly, digital markets have been at the top of the list for quite some time. And not only mergers, but also, for instance, for abuses of dominant position. So for years, antitrust authorities have not really used this tool a lot. Actually, the first antitrust case against a digital platform was done in Italy, globally. In 2009, it was an antitrust case against Google. And it was about the service which is called Google News. It still exists. And the conduct at stake at the time was the fact that Google essentially was creating these services using snippets. So the summaries of the news of the publishers that were active on the internet. And because of the way it has set up things, if you didn't want to contribute to Google News, you would not be found in Google search. Well, so that was the first actual antitrust case. And at the time, it was quite revolutionary. It was quite revolutionary to think about dominance in digital markets, to think that antitrust authorities should intervene in such dynamic market environments. The prevalent consensus was actually that markets that are so dynamic were better left to their own, okay? They would fix themselves. There is a lot of dynamic competition that is taking place, and competition authorities actually have a great deal of margin of error if you want to mess up with this dynamic competitive process. The recent here, actually, the prevalence, if you want, consensus has changed, and has changed thanks to an effort from various disciplines, from competition authorities that have really investigated through market investigations a lot how these markets work, through academia, which has also caught up with the speed at which these markets were evolving. And this has resulted in a lot of actually antitrust cases being brought in Europe mainly against digital platforms. I'm not going to mention all of them, but some of these cases are really related to data and even to personal data. So just let me mention a couple, because I think they give you a feeling of how the different disciplines there are interrelated. And so one example is a case I think we closed last year. Remember, it's about a new company that wanted to develop a new business model in which you would contribute with your data. They would aggregate the data, anonymize it, so they would not be selling your personal data, but would extract value out of this mass of data, and it would give you a large chunk of it, a large percentage of this value. In order for this system to work, you had to give the data, and you could perfectly do so. And there is a tool, you have it also in the GDPR, Article 20, portability of personal data, but the way Google was at the time misbehaving, it did not really allow for a smoothless portability of data. And so we intervened in that market because the idea was that things like these are very innovative business models, innovative markets, innovative services are really something we should protect, okay? So, and in this respect, you can see certainly this relationship between the GDPR and the way and an intervention that is fostering competition and innovation in markets. But the relationship between these two disciplines is not always, if you want, so complementary. So there are at present a number of antitrust cases that, if you want, also highlight the potential of attrition, if you want, between two different disciplines. So I'm referring, for instance, to the Google Sandbox case. Probably you know that has been looked at by our colleagues in the UK, the Competition Markets Authority. And so this idea that Google would replace, or actually would eliminate, yes, third-party cookies from its web browser. And still developments, even very recent developments, because Google, it seems, last month has suggested that it would just give consumers, call them consumers, that subjects or individuals, the potential to choose whether to do that or not. And the Competition Markets Authority is not yet satisfied that that would not create competition concerns. So we'll see how it develops. At the same time, a number of European countries, such as Italy, is also investigating the Apple ATT policy. So this prompt that you have when you use an application on iPhone, on iOS, and where you are asked whether you want that particular application developed by a third-party provider to track you across apps. Well, it looks like a great features from a privacy point of view. The question is whether this creates possibly a discrimination between the way Apple applications are treated within that ecosystem as opposed to third-party applications, giving Apple an advantage, or whether more generally this is something that it amounts to a sort of unfair, abusive practice with respect to third-party developers. And again, you can see there that this relationship between competition and privacy is not as clear-cut always. And I also want to use these examples to emphasize and to highlight something which is really, really becoming very important in our daily life, which is cooperation, multidisciplinarity. Because you see, clearly we have to talk with data agencies. We didn't used to do in the past, to be fair. There was no need. But actually, we cannot run cases like this if we do not cooperate, okay? And also, to add, if you want, another layer of complications, these cases are inherently global, inherently European. So actually, when several competition authorities are involved, we do cooperate. We are very good at doing that among competition authorities. But now we need to cooperate also with data protection authorities. You have a lot of data protection authorities in Europe as well. Not sure whether they do coordinate the same way we do. So it's really something that in practice we're trying to see how it's gonna work out. But certainly this need to sit all of us together around the table and make sure that we act consistently is extremely important. And in fact, I think in this respect, the DMA has made a huge step towards this multidisciplinarity in creating these groups, the high-level groups, but also the various subgroups that are looking into issues related to the DMA. And the idea that is behind these groups is that they bring together 5 families of regulators: competition regulators, consumer protection agencies, media, telecoms regulators, and data protection agencies, all around the table, and just representatives of all these families of regulators, because we would have something like 120 regulators across Europe. But, in that setup, there's just 30 of us, and sitting around the table discussing things with companies and making sure that we follow a coordinated and consistent approach in enforcing the various legislations that we each of us is entrusted with institutional. And that's not always easy, because sometimes different institutions look at the same issues from very different perspectives. And this is something also I share from our experience, because actually just before the LeADS project started, the year before, we published this report, which was a market investigation. So we also contributed in Italy to this global effort in trying to understand data-driven markets. And we did that by doing a market investigation jointly with the telecoms regulator and the data protection agency. And this was probably the most interesting part of it, okay? So it was really where you could see actually how differently we would be looking at the same issues. And to be fair, it was not always easy to find a common language, a common approach. So a fundamental rights approach, typical from those who work in data protection, the protection field, and a more economic-oriented approach as that we would consider at the antitrust authorities when we see at data and their role in the market. If you want, as an economic commodity, in its relation to competition, we can see it as a non-monetary price you pay in order to have access to certain services. We could see as a level of quality of a particular service when it's very privacy oriented. So and these issues, so this idea that privacy data are, if you want, an economic commodity, they characterize the relationship between digital platforms and consumers, we've also pursued not only through antitrust, but also through consumer protection. Indeed, we did a lot of cases in consumer protection where we really wanted to make sure that certain principles could be accepted. And this was before same principles are now probably enshrined in European legislation. So the idea that you have a consumer relationship between a consumer and a platform, even if the service is provided for free, so the consumer code applies. So we even had a case against Facebook, which was promoting its social media as free. And we were arguing it's not free because you are extracting data. And so in August, a few years ago, Facebook turned from being free to be fast and quick, something like that. But still, you do not pay any monetary price for that, so you don't have to blame the Italian competition authorities for that. But it is important that, we converge, if you want, on a common understanding even though we see the different phenomena from very different perspectives, it's really important that we converge on a common understanding. If we cannot do that, if we just, are not prepared to understand and to enter into new domains. And so it's really, really important that we talk with the different regulators. And as regulations is becoming more and more complex in Europe, I've lost track of the data acts, the II acts, etc. I must confess. This is even more important. And so the multidisciplinarity of the LeADS project, I've always found it particularly fascinating because it's really, really where I can see that a lot of advances can be made in approaching these data-driven markets and innovation. And so some challenges ahead. Okay, I've given you some examples of what we've done. There are a lot of new challenges. That's why it's so exciting. So every day there's something new. So the new frontiers. Well, there is certainly still a lot to understand, and we're still trying to understand how to deal with that. With what happens when companies use a lot of data and artificial intelligence to determine prices. So is it business as usual? Is it something we should be concerned about? And the issue there is that has been raised by many scholars is that, well, perhaps we should be careful because something could not be working that well. And why? So this idea that clearly, technology has given companies the ability to automatize price setting behavior. Clearly, serious sellers online do not set prices manually, okay? So they have software. And so there are many issues that can come up with that. What happens if a lot of competing sellers use the same software? And what happens if that software somehow is constructed in a way to maximize joint profits? And so it's like collusion. And what happens if actually all this transparency that you have online, all these data extraction capabilities that are used to monitor behavior of your competitors with whom you had reached an agreement, even the old style, in a smoke-filled room. But now you have a lot of technology that can help you with the monitoring. Okay, this, somehow you could deal with even existing legislation with it, but then there are more innovative circumstances. We've been talking about this for a few years, yet, the debate is still there. We are waiting for big cases about these issues. So what happens when companies use artificial intelligence to set prices? They ask their artificial intelligence to maximize their own profit. This is perfectly legal. I mean, that's the objective every company should have and has, maximize profits. And now what happens if artificial intelligence, by interacting in a very transparent environment, very quickly, finds out that the best way to maximize profits is to tacitly pollute? Okay? And there are papers that show that actually this can happen and can happen very quickly. Not all papers, share the same results, but this is a concern. And this is very interesting because that's not collusion in the way we normally think. It's not a type of pollution that could be captured really by existing legislation. So if companies did that, it's not clear we could really intervene because after all, they are not really agreeing to do something wrong. So each company is simply maximizing profits. So this is, and then there is, on top of these issues related to the impact of data artificial intelligence on collusion, another big strand that we are looking into, and we also trying to understand what's happening, whether we should intervene, with what tools, because these are all unanswered questions in a certain way. And so data is used to personalize services, right? So that's good. Most of the times it's really good. You get personalized services. Well, now there is a growing body of literature trying to understand what happens if when you have recommender systems. And actually there is some results that actually recommender systems bring about more concentration in markets. And so not necessarily something to worry about, but the idea that the way the data is used in certain digital service can have an impact on the structure of the market, on the way competition takes place, is something to think about. And then there is the issue, but what happens when personalization is not about a type of service, but it's about the price you pay? So what happens when I can use the knowledge that I have in order to set prices that are individual? Should we worry about that? There could be efficiency to some extent in the price differentiation, but we could end up to a point where actually they know us so well that they could extract what we call all our consumer surplus. So they would actually just provide us with, at the marginal price, we would be willing to purchase something. And this is actually the other big new frontier. So it's not clear how many companies are using or are personalizing prices, but this is growing. So there is some evidence that this practice is growing, and it's not clear how you could intervene and with what tool. And so again, here I think that the answer will come up from a combination of our efforts as competition authorities and the effort of you all as researchers and now data-trained researchers, because there are a lot of unanswered questions. And so I think that this is gonna take us busy for a while. Okay, so I close here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Antonio. You see how an amazing panel we have. Let's use time and see if there are questions. I have several questions. We have less than 10 minutes for the people. I would suggest and ask if you can, the first question to Justice Pitruzzella, because he has to get back. So I literally stopped him from dropping out. So they're waiting for him. So the first question for Professor Pitruzzella, if there is from audience, I do have one, and myself, a lot of them, and I have a nasty one for each of the speakers at a time. So is there any question from the audience right now for Professor Pitruzzella? Yes. Quick one.
Yeah.
Robert. Yeah.
Okay, there was one from me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Okay. So first Robert, then I mean.
So can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much for your presentation and for all of your presentations. But my question was in relation to Article 11 and 52, have you looked at any of the online hate speech detection systems or disinformation detection systems to see the ways in which they're defining hate speech, for instance, or disinformation? And have you thought much about applying a proportionality test to the different fact scenarios surrounding the use of those tools? And if you have, what may have given you concern, if you had concern?
Unfortunately, you don't have enough hours to do it. Gabriele, the question is for Judge Pitruzzella or not?
Yes, it's for
Go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so let's see if I can formulate the question. So I'm a technical guy. Okay, so I'm working on this information analysis actually in another project I have. And for me, there is a big difference between presence of this information or spread of this information. What's the presence? If you want to regulate the presence, you have to understand what it is. And here, if you look at more in the technicality, people perceive information in a different way. So our mental model are different. So if you want to regulate how people read this information, it becomes a bit tricky to me, because I'm pretty sure if me and another country guy read the same news, we will get different results. But also the spread, so is more important for you. They need to be regulated.
Go to the question because we don't have
time. The
time.
question is that, so it's better to have technical instruments or leading the phenomena or regulating from above. Because X, for example, is investigating community nodes, which is a technical measure that seems to be important. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to all the panelists. I learned a lot of things from you. Thank you to Giovanni, and thank you for these questions. I think that you have pointed out the main problem that we have to face with regulation. Okay. We need some regulation because in order to protect some human rights, especially the human dignity, which is the cornerstone of our European construction. But we should consider that regulation can arrive late and can hinder innovation. So in my opinion, but it's a personal opinion, we should find the proper balance between some regulation, which should be tailored in order to last, just general principles, and especially we should invest time, resources, and research in technical devices, in technical solution, in order to manage with this information. I am well aware that it's difficult to draw a line between disinformation and opinion. In Europe, as in US, we protect the debate, the flourishing of different opinions in our open society. All our constitutional system guarantee this kind of pluralism, even if ideas are expressed in a very strong way. So I think that the main challenge for us is to draw a line between what can be labeled as disinformation. So when we are in presence of the use of information in order to manipulate, to distort, perhaps the intention to manipulate is an important criteria. Anyway, in this exercise, proportionality is generally a good test, but I think that we should look at the application of the Digital Service Act, the application of the code on this information, and the jurisprudence of the Court of Justice, which will give us the route to follow. In this perspective, I wonder if there is a space for cooperation between the Court of Justice and Constitutional Court in order to frame the European constitutional space, especially as concerns the digital environment. So I stop.
Thank you.
Thank you to you. Thank you, and a special thanks to Professor Comandé.
Thanks for you. Thanks. All right, so further questions you have 5 minutes. Oh, 10 minutes. Thanks. Again, we have 5 to 6 minutes left before a very short break. There is a question here from Aceh.
So I will be very brief because we are short on time. I want to ask about generative AI and the use of data that is attached to particular services that have close to monopoly stance to train those generative models. I think the best example is GitHub Copilot and the controversy that was surrounded the use of open source code to train the GitHub's Copilot. And I just wanted to ask about the stance of the authority, if there is stance on that particular matter. Thank you very much.
Is there another question? I might ask the nasty question afterwards outside the panel then.
Yeah, I will have a very quick questions. And you mentioned the self-data management in the healthy care data driven market, and it touched a very core point of the GDPR is a notice consent from work. So you need to notice the data subjects, the information, and they will decide they will disclose their data or not. So my concern is that, okay, we assume that the data subject is a very valued and reasonable person, and they can decide if they share it or not. But in the actual life, maybe it doesn't work because they have the bias. They don't know that their private person preferences, or they don't know the actual value of their data. So I'm not sure it's a good way to address the data disclosure problem, or maybe just make the part the data subjects. So it's just ask this. It's very.
I don't see any further questions. So very quickly, the last question: are you sure? It's very well known that competition authorities have a long history of excellent cooperation mechanism, and actually legislation mirrored what you are already doing, inserting obligation of cooperation for other authorities, like the data protection authorities. But may I ask you, what is the trick that made to work for the competition authorities in such a powerful way, the cooperation across the board? And to Professor Turchetti, are you sure that actually this is the innovation coming out in the health sector is not going just to enhance the divide between north-south, poor-rich, shrinking the cost for the production and actually making it less accessible? And now I shut up, and let's see first the answers. I asked before, Militia, sorry. Okay. Claudio?
Yes. Okay, so generative AI, yes. So this is the big issue we are all discussing about, and also within competition authorities, across competition authorities, there's a lot of effort being put in understanding what's happening in the AI value chain, what are the bottlenecks, and whether we should worry or not. So indeed, you mentioned data. That's one of the three main pillars that have been identified as potential bottlenecks in the AI value chain, together with computing power, GPUs, and together with talent, essentially, and that have, led competition authorities somehow to express a general concern that actually we would have a new, incredibly important, not even an industry, a technology that is gonna power a lot of our lives, a lot of our services, and could be built upon, pillars that are very concentrated and that lack competition. Now, these have been investigated. These issues have been discussed in a number of studies by the CMA, by the Portuguese competition authorities that has published a number of studies. So yet, this has not led to enforcement action. We still trying to monitor clearly what's happening. We see that there are a whole range of, foundation models, different business models, open source, proprietary, and clearly, Copilot being integrated in the Microsoft ecosystem as a certain business model, and it could raise certain concerns. There's, I don't know, Llama with Meta that has a completely different business model, and Apple as well has decided to integrate AI in its products, again, with a different, more privacy, if you want, friendly model. So we're still observing. Clearly, you pointed out one of the potential concerns, but still, it's there's not been enforcement action. It's not clear that there is an issue there. So it's a possible concern. And just to so I'll complete my replies. So yeah, that's a good question. It's not easy to find, but when we talk about cooperation, I think sometimes, it's a great word. Who doesn't like cooperation? Okay, so to be fair. But the point is, cooperation is really difficult to achieve in practice. And I think that one of the reasons why cooperation among competition authorities has worked is twofold. In a way, it's because it was based on a very clear set of rules somehow. So it was enshrined in European somehow legislation. So we had rules that set out the stage where we could cooperate. So gave us the tools, gave us the rules of the game. And at the same time, these are cooperation among equals, but with the European Commission playing a little bit of a coordinator. And so that probably has also helped because, when there are issues that are looked at differently by various competition authorities, it helps to have somebody that brings everybody around the table and tries to find a common perspective. So, I'm not an expert, but if I were to point out two things, I would say these two things, and which suggests that if we want to achieve fruitful cooperation, it's not only that we
need to ask for more cooperation, but we should set the institutional mechanisms to make it real and to make it work.
Thanks a lot.
Starting from your comment, Giovanni, the question was, there is the risk that this availability of data might enlarge the gap between rich and poor countries. The answer is yes, of course, there is the risk. But
you will give us the solution, right?
Exactly, because we have so many tools to manage the risk and to try to reduce the risk without losing the opportunities that are related to this availability of data. I'm sure that in the R&D process in the pharma or in medical devices sector, the use of these technologies might really shorten the R&D period and will reduce in a very relevant way the overall cost of this process, and which could be the way to reduce the risk of enlarging the gap, is to try to define a new pricing mechanism of the technologies, of the innovations that come through this different R&D process, simply because the costs are lower and the time frame necessary to have a relevant result is much shorter. So also the pricing mechanism should be different. With respect to the first observation, I think that the availability of people to share their health data, I think that it's a matter of communication in this case. To make very clear the benefits for everybody and also for them, for people sharing their personal health information that come from this sharing and all the benefits related to new findings, new technologies, and new knowledge that might come from a larger bunch of data. It's a matter of communication, in my opinion, because and I always make this comment. I don't know, you might help me in solving this puzzle that strikes me very much. Why people are willing, and they actually do, share their fingerprints or share their eye traces with Google, with Apple, and did not in anonymous way share their diabetes or their cardiovascular diseases data with a healthcare system. I'm astonished by that, honestly speaking, because I share this kind of data and I will never share my fingerprints with them. Never. Okay? So it's a matter of communication to make them very much aware of the implications that this sharing might represent for themselves and for the society.
Thank you very much. Please join me in thanking with a big applause this amazing panel. Definitely thankful to them. And now LeADS is very happy to invite you for a very quick lunch, because at 2 o'clock we will resume with a marvelous, amazing panel too. Okay, so on the left side, getting out from the room, we invite also the guests from the Internet Festival to join us.